Hey, good evening, people. Good evening. This is Spirit Journey. How you all doing? Boy, doesn't this Manhattan skyline look fantastic? It's always a pleasure doing videos when it's dark outside and you see the beautiful lights on the building. It's very relaxing. It's very beautiful. Yeah, I'm surprised I'm doing a live stream. I was going to do one, but I think I want to do one today. I had an interesting day. Um, well, I went to the dentist. Yes, yes. I've had this chronic pain in my mouth. Yes, I had this chronic pain in my mouth for over 20 years. And I mean, I've gone to the dentist throughout these 20 years, but thinking about relocating and things like that, over the past 1 year, uh, I talked to a family member, and they say, you better get it checked out. And because they said so, I shouldn't say it like that, but I took it more to heart. And so I made an appointment with a private dentist, a dentist that offers sedation. That's the key word here, sedation. Oh, okay. Hey, Nubian. All is well, all is well. Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting topic I'm going to talk about. But, I'm just doing the prelude to, how, what I did today. Yeah, I had to go to a dentist. First time I'm at this guy's office, it was generally a very, very positive experience. Guy, um, he's been a dentist since for 40 years. Yeah, for about 40 years. And yeah, a lot of dentists here in New York City do not offer, when they kind of put you to sleep for a procedure. Yeah, a lot of dentists don't want to go near that. And yes, I am a veteran, and I can get it done for free there. But I had two warnings there at the VA hospital, and I'm very intuition. Now, if you mess up twice on a matter, I take that as a sign. Don't go there. Okay, that's how I am. And I see as I get older, I'm more uh, acute. Yeah, I'm very like uh, it cut and dry. Yes or no, up and down. Very very extreme. That's just how I've been developing. But yeah, so that's what happened. I found a new dentist to go to that offers, if you need it, sedation. Yeah, I'm very anxious. Yeah, I had bad experiences with dentists. I used to love going to the dentist. I used to like their what do you call it? Their toothpaste that they use on your mouth. It tastes like really gritty, but I used to like that. When they clean your teeth. Well, when you have a trauma, when you go to a dentist, it just continue bad experiences, you get kind of edgy. So yeah, I'm very get nervous going to the dentist, but I used to love going to the dentist, but not anymore. um, so um, yeah, so today I actually had a dental appointment because I had this chronic pain, and I know there's a lot of things going on in my mouth. But this video is not about dentistry per se, but a term that was used. And I was just lying in bed. I'm in bed right now, and I started, at nighttime, I kind of regroup and think about what happened during the day, try to process everything. And I thought about a term that was used today. And as you see in the description, the title, I wrote, "Who am I?" Oh, yeah, today is April 13th, 2023, and it was 9:36 when I started this live stream. But I'm thinking, who am I? And why I asked that question is based on, like in the description, I wrote um, Black versus African American. You know, um, what are these terms? Which one are we really different from each other? Is being called Black versus African American, is that equal or is that different? So I want to just talk about my experiences with regard to those words. Um, Now, I've said many times in in this live stream, I've used the term black, and it is a political term, I would say. I was born and raised in the United States, in New York City, and I would imagine in different regions in the United States, maybe they have different terms, and over time, if you look at some of the documents over, like if you're doing your ancestry and you look at the old documents, now there are, terms that are used with regard to people from the continent of Africa that are brought here in the Americas. Okay. Now, they generally use the term African for those who directly came out from there. They were born and raised there, and the genetics are from there. And then you have the term black that might be used, like in the census, American census. And they'll also have mulatto, be a cross between a black with a European type person. But you see that the different terms could be used interchangeably at times. Um, but when I went to the dentist today, um, I had a really nice time talking to him. He really put me at ease, and we talked about different things before, the actual, examination. Yeah, he was very patient with me, and I guess doing this type of work for 40 years, you would know how to talk to nervous patients like myself. Um, and then in the examination room, he was going over the X-rays, and he has this machine that does 3D X-rays. Yeah, it does like a panoramic view of your face, your mouth area. It goes horizontally across your face. And it gives you a 3D rendering. And I got to see what my face, that part of my face, what it looks like. I got a nice little face. I'm excited. It was exciting to look at. And it's really weird, people. I like me. I've learned to really like me. And I grew up, I'm giving you like background information about myself to really understand the terms. And it might sound petty to some of you. And I hope I don't lose you too much in this conversation, but I think it's an important one because it's really politics is what I'm really getting at. There's genetics and then there's politics. And it's the politics that is troubling me here. Now, I grew up not really, in the United States, in New York City, the the propaganda against people of African ancestry, I would say, so-called black slash sub-Saharan African phenotypes, and we're shamed about it. But I think, as time went on, I started asking questions. What makes other people better than others? And I said to myself, nothing. No one is better than somebody else just because. And I started to later embrace myself, embrace who I am in relationship to the social, political environment that I live on in New York City or the United States. It's something when you see what you look like uh, underneath your skin. It is very, very interesting. I hope you guys can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me okay on the audio portion of this. Um, yeah, you could type a one for yes that you can hear the audio, that it's clear. Um, but I mean, when you come out from, living here in the United States, I mean, um, you can get hangups and problems. And it's like you wake up one morning and it's like someone has a problem with you, and it's nothing that you've done. It's just, they say it's what you are. What you are interferes with what somebody else's, which is ridiculous. But this is what I would say is like for many people um, from what they call the black community. So, again, what is black and what is African? So, yeah, I was just mentioning also that terminology are interchanging a lot in American uh, labels. Um, but initially, those that were brought over from the continent of Africa were called Africans. And I would say there's so-called sub-Sahara types. But again, you have people in North Africa that can have similar phenotype. Just saying. But either way, um, as time went on, uh, different terms were used because you're using terms that are to describe a person or a group of people. When someone in a region has, I guess, certain little, depending on what makes them stand out, what labels are projected upon them, you know. So, um, so to see yourself in a 3D rendering of an X-ray, we are really interesting people. If you have an opportunity to get a cranial view of your face, it is remarkable. We are remarkable beings. It just when I saw, I said, "Wow!" I was telling the doctor, I said, "Boy, I love me." Yeah, I do. I'm learning to. If you, I've come a long way. Um, I was always a very sensitive child, and believing everything around me, what was projected at me. Um, but one day you start to toughen up a little bit and you start to say, hey, wait a minute, why are you calling me this or that? And you start to see yourself in a different light. And I started to appreciate myself more. I said, you're really no different than anybody else. And then you start to maybe learn about your own history, family history, um, and you really start to appreciate yourself. So when I went to the dentist today, again, um, he was trying to put me at ease and everything, and I like that he was very thorough. And yeah, I would say he's from that generation that I was raised under, so to speak. He could be like maybe late 60s, early 70s. But I would say people like him and me, we were under a, a very similar um, social, that social umbrella. So back in the day, you were either called black or white, basically, regardless what you mix with, whatever. Those are the terms, and that's what I used. That I was a so-called black person, but the political terms have changed. I remember hearing for the first time a Nubian. Oh, okay. Did you want to Nubian? Did you want to ask now or in a private conversation later on after my live stream? Yeah. So, what was I just saying now? Yeah. Oh, okay. The term African American. Well, um, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So the so I'm comfortable. I Life has taught me to embrace myself, and especially seeing that 3D image of my skeleton, my facial skeleton. It is fantastic. And also, I did get my DNA done years ago in 2009 and 2015 around. I got my DNA. I used Family Tree DNA, and I found out. Yeah, I I people like myself, a lot of so-called black people, and I say it like that because again, the different social terms over the years, different social labels were put on certain demographics. Uh, so I'm using that term, but again, I will be discussing their new terms that I use, and they may identify with what I call myself. So, but it's all good. No, no, what you call yourself is fine. Um, so okay, I keep getting distracted. I'm sorry. Um, but who are we? And so seeing the beautiful structure of my face and the X-ray, and the 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 dentist asked. He was really thorough with the examination, and this 3D X-ray that was used, you can see all different angles, horizontal, vertical, side to side. I mean, really, and in layers, like an MRI. You can see in different layers. It's really something. This science. Um, but in describing what was going on in my mouth, um, he said that he noticed. I mean, again, he's talking to me as a scientist, as a doctor slash scientist, that he noticed with certain within certain groups, certain patterns um, in the jaw, with around the teeth, happens, and he used the term African American. He noticed that a lot of us have this component in our the bone structure in where the teeth are, that under X-rays it could look a little different. It's something that they notice, and so on that level, he's talking as a scientist, and I do have a science background, and I love science. But at the same time, I felt a little uncomfortable. Now, on an intellectual, scientific level, in describing uh, a genetic pool of individuals and noticing certain patterns within that group, I'm all open for that. I have no problem with that label. But on a social political level, I have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with having African blood. And as I said, I got my DNA done. And my mitochondrial DNA, the mitochondrial is what your mom passes on to the children. The mothers pass on to their daughters and sons, but sons don't pass it on to their daughters if they have. They pass on their Y chromosome, okay? But so it's very specific mitochondrial DNA, and it changes very, very, very slowly over generations. And my mitochondrial DNA is very old. It's over 100,000 years old. Okay, and like my mitochondrial DNA is L1C3B L1C3BC, and so the L1. Now the earliest man is L0, okay, but I'm L1. So this denotes that my DNA is very close to uh, our ancestral Eve. And I'm damn proud of that. I'm excited about that. That my mitochondrial DNA is that old. And I embrace it. I love the fact that my DNA is ancient Africa. I love it. I have no shame whatsoever about that. I think it's fantastic. Um, so if I feel so fantastic of having African mitochondrial DNA, so why am I feeling uncomfortable with the term African American? And that's what this live stream is about. It's more, this is more about sharing the politics of a heated term. What's heated about it? That's what this video, this live stream is going to discuss. And it'd be nice if you guys want to comment below, or, or share in the what do you call it, in the chat room, whatever what your thoughts are too. It's all good. Now, so how could someone who is proud of their having African mitochondrial DNA but feeling uncomfortable with the term African American? And this is it. Now, I now I'm 60 years old, and when I came of age, um, when you had to fill, yeah, we had to do, like in school, elementary school, what do you call it, public school, we had to fill out questionnaires, I remember, and they always be asking what your race is and stuff like that. And they would have black. And so, I was taught to say black. People have to be taught what they are. You don't grow up to know what you are. You are told what you are. And so that's what I put down. But I noticed that certain terms were considered good and others bad. In Western culture, the term black is always used in a negative connotation. But I even did a video maybe 8 years ago, and I entitled it Black, the New Pure. I'm really proud of that video. Yeah, yeah, the black, the new pure, because you're taught that the term black means like everything negative, that it's black means something evil, something dirty, um, impure. And then I one day I was doing an analysis. I was deep thinking. I said, okay, if white is considered pure and good, or the word purity means that it is something that excludes everything else. It's exclusive. You know, it's like you're getting salt, and does that salt have anything else in it? If it does not have anything else in it, then it is called pure. Well, what if something is black and only has that which is black in it? Isn't that then technically called pure? So something could be black and be pure, and something white could be pure. Now, again, these are just, yeah, it's politics, right? Yeah. But I started thinking about that. So some years ago, and I did the video called Black the New Pure. And so I was teaching myself that, again, back in those days, you know, people with my demographics, amongst the demographic that I lived among, we were all called black. But I had a new appreciation that, hey, uh, black is beautiful. Black does not mean evil. What you do is what makes you evil. What you do, the some inanimate object is not good or bad. It just is. We are all is. Everything is equal but different. Equal does not mean better. I mean, equal doesn't mean the same. I meant to say equal does not mean the same. You could be different, but being different doesn't mean that something is better than something else because you're different. Different is different. Of a banana versus grapes, they are different, but they're not one better than the other. It's just a quality. And so I started seeing people that we all are different, but no one is better than because of those differences. Um, and again, the term, I was brought up to on paper, okay, this is what you call yourself. And with that, people, at least I'm from New York City, things were very socially segregated. And so you had to live in certain regions, certain parts of town versus others. But based on what people perceive you as being, again, you had subgroups that were developing in New York City. So old school, I consider myself old school now, but just imagine 80 years from now, the new school is now going to be an old school. You know what I'm saying? So things are redundant after a while because new labels and orientations, different ways of looking at yourself. I never really saw myself as old school. I thought I was always current. But then there's a part of your development, at least with mine, that I'm seeing myself. Um, I don't want to say stagnant, but it's like you do your development, and then you just want to stay where you are. You've changed all these years. I mean, physically you're always changing, but like your mindset. It's like what shaped you. Um, like I would say maybe the past 40 years that I was always felt current with society. But then past that time, I I become more resistant to want to change to the new trends that are happening. And so with that, I started to see myself as old school because I'm not about the new new way of doing things. Like people walk around with their cell phones. We're not talking to each other. We're just looking at our devices in the middle of the street. And when I saw myself, like I at one time, I know I'm sounding like I'm getting off the track, but I'm really still on the track. I'm just trying to pull things together to see where I'm coming from. Yeah, one day I saw myself with my cell phone looking down as I walked on my cell phone and not looking where I was going. And I caught myself doing that. And I said, shame on me. Yeah, it's about a year and a half now that I terminated my cell phone account. So now I just have a house phone, but I do have a computer at home. Um, yeah, I said, I don't need a cell phone. I have my house phone, my regular landline house phone with an answer machine on it. I said, I, I don't want to look like those people out there walking around like a zombie with their cell phone, crossing the street while looking on your cell phone. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm resistant to that change. I don't want it. So that's what I mean, old school now. There's a limit. Like I was growing with society. And then now say, I don't like where things are headed. I'm not going to go there, people. So I'm resistant. Now I'm like, no, I'm not going to change anymore. So now I've earned the badge of saying I'm old school. But that could be also a cover too at times when people go, I'm old school, trying to say that you're ignorant, right? Or stubborn. But so that's where I am right now. So with that, being old school, again, terminology. And again, terminology, my growing up in elementary, junior high school, and military. They always ask you what on these questionnaires about your race, and I don't know why it means anything. It really doesn't. I'm not benefited by it, and I think it's used to hold people back. But either way, um, I first heard the term African American in the early 90s, early 1990s. I was walking with a family member, a friend of the family, my parents' generation, and she was a very dark skinned woman. Her ancestry is from the American South, um, and she was talking to a family member of mine and saying, "What's this terminology? This I'm not no African American." And I'm even though she phenotypically um, very 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 pure looking genetics of the continent of Africa. Yes, and Africans have very different, according to what region, have different phenotypes. We all know, yes, we all know that in general. Um, yes, Africa, the continent of Africa is the most genetically diverse region of the planet. It's the oldest. So its genetics is very, very diverse. But anyway, that was the first time I heard the term African American, and it was used. It was, my parents' generation, a friend of the family, discussing it and how uncomfortable she was very, very angry about it. She liked herself. She did well in business. She made a lot of money, but it was a turn. It's something that I remembered. I was just in the earshot of them. Um, so that was my first experience with the term African American. I would later, over over the term, like 20 something years ago, I was living in Hawaii, and I had a roommate, and in the conversation that I was a black person, and it was a white woman, what we would call a white woman. She's from California, and she says, "Oh, I don't like that term." She's telling me she doesn't like the term black, but that's who I was told. Isn't that what white people said that we were? Hey, I see you, Nubian. Yeah, yeah. So these are just, it's really something. That was the first time I heard of a white person, so-called white person, get angry, might define myself as a black person. So, and that was in the state of Hawaii. So that was interesting. Um, and then coming back to the U.S. mainland, um, the terms. Now, New York City has many people, many people actually from the Caribbean region, and very political terms. It's you have people from, let's see, how I know how it gets very political is that you have what they call race, and then you have nationality. Oh yeah, yeah. I was, yes, Nubian. Yeah, I did respond. I said that if you wanted to get my opinion on the matter, yeah, you could. We could talk about that off camera. Yeah, yeah. I thought you heard me respond. Yeah, I don't mind if you ask me opinion about something. But we could talk about that off camera. That's no problem. But if it's, you could you could write down the subject matter what you wanted to talk about if you can. Oh, okay, you went to the bathroom. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, we could talk off camera if you like. That's no problem. Yeah. Is it something you wanted to talk off camera or on camera? Is it on the topic of black versus African American? So either way, okay. Yes. So yeah, I see you're okay right now. Okay. Off. Okay. I'm just reading the chats right now. So either way, yeah. So in the United States, I live in New York City. Things are getting very political, and the term black again has a very negative connotation, and people are discriminated based on what label they have. And the Caribbean is very old in, I think, one of the earlier colonies in the Americas was the Caribbean. And as you know, many of you know, in the Caribbean, it was filled with, it had a very strong history of enslavement of people from the African continent, primarily from West Africa and central part of Africa. And with that, shame, and there's also what you call colorism. And what I mean by colorism, well, because the sting of slavery or enslavement, uh, your status was based on what you look like, what you're born into. Your status of slave or free was based on who your mother was. So if you come out of a womb of a woman that was enslaved, the child's enslaved, even though, let's say, the father was a free person. So your social status in the Americas was based on your status of your mother. And again, many of these women were from Africa, and many of these women were enslaved. So if you have a long legacy of that, and what they did in the Caribbean, well, especially in the um, Spanish colonies and Portuguese colonies, they were a little, I mean, slavery is slavery, but there were political things that were happening because those colonies from Spain and Portugal, they did not bring their wives or girlfriends with them. So they acquired women from the women that they kidnapped and enslaved. So their women to form families with were either from Africa or the people that were here when Columbus arrived, that type of demographics. And the people in power were from those unions, the early settlements. They formed their unions with those women and the European men, and the subsequent unions of those offsprings were through European men. And so they were the power structures of the Caribbean, and especially the Portuguese and Spanish speaking regions. But in the, let's say, British or the Netherlands or France, um, many of them brought wives with them. So that's what really, I think, characterized that. And again, if you in a union where you have a lot of what they call interracial marriages or unions, you're going to have a lot of mixed race people. And if you kept a political system that your status was based on who your mother was, then your slave population will outnumber your free population. So they started to, I think of it as brownie points. I hate a word like that. But think of it as points that the more European you looked, um, you may get certain favors. Um, and so that's what was, your status might change. You might be able to purchase your freedom. So, so this happened a lot in the Caribbean, in the Spanish West Indies. This different colorization, of people, different shades of colors, if I could word it like that. But in contrast with the United States, you had a system that initially, yes, you had they would distinguish between the African, the European, and then when you had a union between the two, they would indicate on the census that it was the letter M is in Mary for what they call mulatto. That's just someone designated a person of mixed blood, and usually of African and European ancestry. And like in Mexico, they use the term mestizos, and that generally is really used to denote a European within what they call an Indian heritage. But either way, they started, when more mixing started happening, you had to also define those differences when it becomes very apparent that someone is not now a real African or a real European, and it's a blending between those two. You have to, give labels to give a distinction between different groups. So fast forward, someone coming from a background where you have a lot of mixing and giving new terminology, and also with that, certain privileges behind those labels. Again, in Western culture, uh, black has a negative connotation, and that your skin was used as a code of distinction between who's going to be the ruling class and who's going to not be from the ruling class. And so now, someone coming from, let's say, what they call Latin America or the Spanish speaking regions of the Americas, um, when they come to the US, let's say New York, because that's where I'm from, you have an old system of distinction, labels, and how you may classify yourself racially, versus in New York or United States of what they call the one drop law. In the United States, if any perceivable, if it's known that any part of your heritage is from that African ancestry, especially from someone's lineage from enslavement, you would then could be classified and definitely discriminated against. So in New York, you have they're learning these politics between uh, distinction between uh, the Spanish-speaking countries versus uh, English-speaking United States. They were clashing, and they're making distinctions between the two. So I think I was told Ronald Reagan, and if someone knows, let me know if, if you are like a sociology major or something. But like I was told, Ronald Reagan, the former president, he was president in 1980. Um, he devised the term Hispanic as a new category. Now in New York City, the Hispanic community, I think now is the largest community in New York City. Oh yes, it's a very, very large. But in that, okay, you again you have a lot of mixing within these groups. Primarily in the Caribbean, it's a black and white mix. But places like Mexico or Peru, you have indigenous and European mix. And they're making now a distinction between the groups. And also with the distinction, who's going to have, again, the United States is all about status and hierarchy. They don't, many people from the Spanish speaking regions do not, even if they are clearly someone of African ancestry, they do not want to, they would not on paper call themselves black. For example, oh, I see my battery's running low, so I better hurry up. So, like, for example, I had a friend. She was from one of the Caribbean islands that is Spanish speaking. She is dark complected, and she had to do paperwork for processing to um, apply for the military. And so I think the recruiter was just going to put down what he thought she was. And it was obviously her phenotype was someone of African ancestry. But she said, no, I'm Hispanic. And so I said, oh, okay. Now, yes, you have, so what's happening there? If someone is clearly genetically of an African background, And he would not have been one to assume that she was someone of an African background, Afro-Caribbean, or whatever. So why is it necessary? Why was it? Because it is making a distinction, and it seems to be a hierarchy now. So you have those. So how could someone be called, if it's about genetics, and let's say you're talking about science, or let's say with the dentist that I went to, and notice that there are distinctions between the clients over time who now are classified as African American, certain distinctions within their teeth, the bone portion of the jaw, that there's a phenomena that they see in the x-rays, and that it's being seen primarily with people of African ancestry. Okay, so he's using it on a genetics, you know, um, but when he used the term for me, I felt uncomfortable because I was not raised to think of myself, to call myself African American, but a black person. Again, these are social political terms versus something that's more used on a scientific slash um, a regional distinction. Because yes, there are differences in populations, and I am aware of that. So, but you still have the political aspect, and how this friend of mine who made sure that when they put something on that paper, she did not want the person to put down black, even that though that she was, but she wanted that distinction, that she was a distinct group of being from the Hispanic community. So again, you have a demographics. At one time, we were all in the Caribbean were called black or African. Or again, if someone had two different parents, one black, one white, then we have another category. But in general, so what's happening? And why this distinction? It's clearly here in the United States, clearly in New York City, you have politics, and you have people who politically are asserting themselves as a new demographics. Again, this demographic wasn't really around. I mean, you may have people who were in the U.S., but not having that the option to put down that label back in the day. It's only when in 1980s did that term come about. So what was happening before? What did they put down before? And again, in particular the Hispanic community, many people surprisingly identify with their white heritage. So on paper, many Hispanics, and in the U.S. we may call them black or a lighter skinned black person, but many of them actually define themselves as white. Again, how you perceive yourself and what you consider yourself is a personal one, and it's really none of anybody's business what you call. But my distinction here in this live stream is the scientific studies about when you're studying demographics versus I'm sorry, yes, scientific study versus social political terms. So what if I were born, let's say if I was born in a Spanish speaking country in the Caribbean? So would I still be technically, so what would I be to that doctor? Would do people from, let's say, Haiti, what do you call it, Haiti or the Dominican Republic or Puerto, would they, would they, would it be different? Why would it be different? Okay, if it's a region, now my genetics now, it's not from North America. So the term, I know I'm nitpicking, but it's how terms, it's like you're being pulled in so many directions. African American, I always thought of that term of someone from the continent who lives here when I first heard the term. And the differences in appearance. So I think maybe initially I just took it as that, that yeah, there are physical differences in us, and to distinguish those who are here or off the continent for many generations, because you also denoting a history of a demographic, of a group of people, and it does change over time. But what if terms are changing because of politics? Is the politics, does it remain to be scientific? What if I was born in, let's say, Britain? Or let's say I was born in Australia, but with this have the same parents, the same genetics, and I'm getting the same oral exam. What would the doctor call me? Or what if I was born in Brazil? So would they say, oh well, in the Latin world, Latin Americans, what 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 is he going to call my demographics? I worked in many industries in in New York City amongst people who are immigrants, and many of those immigrants were from the Spanish-speaking world. And yeah, I was in briefly. I was in so many different occupations, but at one time I was in the restaurant industry and the beauticians. You know, the beauty schools. You know, the beauty field. And based on what your label, now I can have the same genetics, but a different last name. And if my last name was a particular one, I would be treated differently. We had people from that had Spanish last names, and they were treated differently and more preferentially than someone, let's say, with an Anglo Saxon last name. So it didn't matter about your genetics, but what new political atmosphere was starting. And it can make or break your career at that company. And that's what was the essence of what happened to me in New York City. I am who I am, and I appreciate who I am. And my so-called struggle uh, for self-acceptance um, was under the term a Black American, and never an African American. So it is kind of hard for me to embrace the term, even though I embrace that I have a very old African mitochondrial DNA. I love it. I really love it. But it's the political label, and the label that I was raised under, and the label, my struggle was not under the term African American. And I feel that when they changed it, yeah, I was told that Jesse Jackson and two other people, so-called black people, here I'm saying so-called black people, um, in the United States had a meeting and decide for the remaining several million Americans, black Americans, that we have to be called African American. And that I have a problem with, because it wasn't a collective choice. And I think the black label was one that was embraced um, during the 1960s and 70s. And it was a term of, how do you say, of standing your ground. Of saying, you meant it for a bad term, but hey, we embrace the term. And we made many strides with that label. So I feel now to put in a new label, you're putting in a new mindset, and you put in a new mindset upon a people who I don't know how it fits us anymore. Or why was it necessary to put in the change? I solely take the term black, not so much a skin color. You could be any complexion, but just someone that came out from a historical, political atmosphere or heritage. That is strictly, yeah. So for me, it's no longer to describe someone who has a ebony complexion. Some of us are pale, so we could come any complexion through, because our genetics have changed over time. But what didn't change was how we're viewed, basically, in the United States. But then with the new demographics entering into American politics and people vying for power, it's separating us. So here you have someone arguing who's clearly of African genetics, a very dark complected woman. So I have 5 minutes left on this live stream. So, 5%, I meant to say. Yes, I have to hurry. Yeah, but batteries are running low. So, friendships could be broken. You have people who say, oh, wow, I don't want to associate with this person because socially they might hinder me in advancement in this country. And that has happened to me. I know of other black people. They were from original Jamaica, but then they were born in Panama and then moved to New York City. And one day, this woman, she's the same complexion as me, uh, African hair, so-called hair, and we. I was talking. It was three of us: me, that woman in question, and another. I think she might have been American born, and she was a beautiful, dark complected woman. And we're in a lobby of a building, and all of a sudden, the woman who was born in Panama of Jamaican ancestry gets upset and all of a sudden starts mentioning how Hispanic she was and this and that. And it was really weird behavior. And then I realized what was happening. She was uncomfortable being amongst, uh, being associated with black, what might be perceived as a black Americans. And so she wants to distinguish herself and not be associated with us because of those white counterparts who were walking. No one was talking to her outside of us three together. And it's this that I'm concerned about, the dividing up us, dividing terms, and it's, I think, decreasing our power ability to fight racism in America. The pulling of and forming different labels upon us. We had a shared history throughout the Americas, and now uh, being used in terms of when you go to a dentist. Would I be called the same thing? I mean, because my genetics, I'm not from, my background is from the Caribbean. So how could he say that I'm an African American? Again, what if I was born in Brazil? What if I was born in Canada? What if I was born, in Britain? Would that be the same demographics? But in American politics, you could be almost anything. You could, and so does the genetics and does are they equal? Well, in American politics, no, we're not equal. We're not treated the same. And um, you can have the same genetics as somebody basically, but socially be treated worse or better than somebody else because of a label. So it's not about genetics. I am nitpicking, very much so. But do you know what I'm talking about, people? Have you known people who were, let's say you went to get your hair done, and then they said, oh, we don't do your people type of hair. But yet, if you had a different last name, they would do your hair. And I've experienced that before. So it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So now perception and genetics are different. You can have the same type of, you know, what makes a group the same, but maybe um, your coloring art isn't the same. But basically, you have the same hair, and you could be denied service from someone who has the same type of hair, but because they are perceived as being different. This has happened to me more than once. So I hold term, there's genetics, there is a heritage, but then there's the social aspect that is dividing us. And that's what I don't like, and that's why I'm doing this live stream. I enjoy my genetics, I enjoy my African heritage, but I do not enjoy being divided up and people with that change of labels. You're changing the effectiveness and your identity, and that I don't like. I like my old identity. And again, yes, identity could change over time because the environment may require it to change. But either way, um, what you what you call yourself should be something that empowers you to greatness. And again, sometimes scientists may use terms that sound scientific, but is it scientific? Are those scientific words really social political terms? And with those social political terms, they could um, prevent you from getting, at times, services based on those labels. They may assume because of the demographics that they think that you belong to, are they going to give you the accurate assessment of who you really are? Your phenotype is one thing, but your genetics, how your body functions, could be something entirely different. And they can screw up your medical care. Okay? So I think it's important what you call. I don't know whether I'll tell the doctor about the dentist that I saw about his labeling me. Again, on a scientific aspect of him calling me African American as it pertains to, he sees certain patterns within the demographics, certain patterns in our in our bone, our jaw, in our mouths, and in characterizing someone else. Again, one other positive note, that the African is the standard. The African genetics is the standard of the whole planet. We are the master template of humanity. And again, I have one of the oldest type of, a very old type of mitochondrial DNA that I'm very proud of. So, yes, our genetics Should, you know, why is our genetics perceived as being so odd or different when everybody else's genetics comes from the African? So how could this European person of European ancestry, it's like they're nitpicking us, but we are the standard. Our genetics is in Africa, and it's in southern part of Asia. It's all in the Pacific Ocean. Most people on this planet are indigenous, and it's the standard of all other humanity. We're not the exception. We are the rule. We are the rule of genetics. We're not foreign. We are indigenous to this planet. And I think that's the other main thing that that what I was wrestling with, the term African American, which is a political term mostly, but I'm saying, hey, my genetics is one of the key genetics of this planet. We're not the exception. We are the rule. And these scientists are seeing through narrow eyes. They're the one that's different. They, their genetics are different from the standard. My genetics and the genetics of Pacific Islanders, of Native Australians, of Southern Asians, African continent, Middle East. We all have that. We come from we are the original man and woman. Yes, they are different. They are, and that's what I was feeling. Where your genetic, what we find that with the African American people, their jaw has this component, and on the X-ray, it may appear like it's a fault or something, but it's just with their genetics. But they're seeing with a filter in their eyes. It's not that we're different; they are different. They are. Yeah, here I got it. I took this long to get to the real meat of it. It is they who are different and odd, and not us. And I'm damn proud of my African genetics. Don't get me wrong. I love my African genetics. I hate the politics and the racism and the pulling us apart and calling us all these different labels, to be called black, to be called Afro Latino, to be called what else? Colored, to be called ethnic. We are the standard. We are not the exception. We are the standard of this planet. We're not strangers to the planet. We are indigenous to this planet. And I don't like when I feel someone who's a newcomer in their genetics. They are new. My genetics is over 100,000 years old, and I'm damn proud of it. That's all that I want to say. Yes, so I embrace myself, and I'm not running away from the term African. It's just the politics behind it, and how we call so many different things, and we start to fight each other amongst the Americas. So people from the Spanish-speaking world, people from the Portuguese-speaking world, people from the West Indian English world, people from the French Francophone-speaking world, and we start to fight amongst each other, trying to prove who's better than the other person based on skin color, rather than them focusing, hey, we had a similar history. We got to the Americas the same way, but it's how we're being treated and view ourselves now that has changed, that is polarizing us. And that I don't like. And the people that don't really have the genetics, the new genetics, want to rule the show and make us feel that we are strangers to our planet. Stop that. Stop that. You are the invader, not me. So that's all that I want to say. Yeah, my battery's going to run low. So I'm going to stop this live stream now. Thank you all for listening and watching, and write your comments below. And yeah, if Nubian's still there, yeah, you could, when I sign off, you could um, call me on the what do you call it, the messenger, okay? So people, take care and enjoy the rest of your day. And again, don't let those newcomers on this planet try to make you feel inferior. We need to come together. Indigenous people, whether you're light or dark, whether you're mixed genetics or not, we all have a common ancestor, being of this planet. Yeah, we're not destroying the planet. They are. They are. Just a reminder, folks. Yeah, love yourself, love the person you see in the mirror, regardless what your labels are, okay? Thank you again for listening. Take care and enjoy your day. Oh, and let me look at that last message and see. Okay, it will says, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Take care and enjoy your day. Bye bye.